This iPhone 14 was left baking in the sun until it completely died, and it was sent to me by another repair shop. Based on the initial symptoms, they assumed a fatal short circuit inside the core logic board, but they were looking in the wrong place. In this video, I'm going to show you how I diagnosed a dead NAND chip and brought this phone back to life. When I first plugged it into the charger, it would restart the charger repeatedly without drawing any power. On a wireless charger, it drew about 0.9 amps, which is a healthy wireless charging current, but pressing the power button yielded absolutely no signs of life. Connecting the device to my bench power supply, it was stuck in a low current loop, drawing up to 250 milliamps and just cycling. Disconnecting everything from the motherboard and trying to power it on with just the board isolated gave me the exact same symptoms. I put the bare motherboard under my microscope, hook it up to the DC power supply, and simulate a power button press using my tweezers. The board shows the exact same low current loop as it did when it was in the housing. Next, I checked all the power rails around the NAND for short circuits. Using my multimeter in diode mode, I found all the lines to be healthy. And since there were no short circuits around the NAND, I checked the voltages to ensure the 2.6 volts, 1.2 volts, and 0.9 volts power rails were present and active. And they were. Okay, before we split the sandwich board, we'll just measure the voltage rails around the NAND and see if that voltage is actually present. So 2.6 volts is present. 1.2 volts is present. And 0.8 volts is present. So the NAND is getting power, and it does not have a short. I was able to force the device into DFU mode, and it was detected on the PC. However, I chose not to run a software update right away to avoid the risk of corrupting the customer's data. To rule out any issues with the top board, I needed to split the sandwich. I used the bottom heater set to 190 degrees Celsius and supplemented with my hot air station at 350 Celsius and 60 air using no nozzle. Now I have my tool resting gently at the seam between the top and bottom board. And as soon as the solder melts, it'll slide in, and then we can proceed with the split. It is extremely important not to force the tool in or to try and force the board apart, because that is how you'll bend the board and then you risk damaging it. Awesome. If you own a repair shop and are dealing with boards like this, I offer special B2B rates for mail-in repairs. Send me a message through the link in the description to partner up. Perfect. The board is split. After splitting the board, a visual inspection is critical. I needed to ensure none of the underfilled components were overheated. So I cleaned off the old thermal paste, which can get in the way during reassembly, and inspected the underfilled CPU, NAND, and the baseband CPU. The usual sign of overheating here is squeezed out solder balls, but everything looked intact and perfect. I removed the shield covering the PMIC and probed for short circuits, but all the readings with my multimeter were absolutely normal. I then tried to boot the isolated bottom board by soldering a wire to VDD main and prompting it via the power button solder pad on the interposer. It still wouldn't boot. A check with the thermal camera revealed no obvious hotspots, and the I2C lines all read normal in diode mode. So this confirmed the solar damage was on the core logic board itself. Okay, so with just the top board alone, it's still stuck in a boot loop. And you can see that on the DC power supply. Good. Now let's check that on the thermal camera and we'll see if anything shows up. So what I'm trying to see right now is if there is a short that we haven't identified, we should see the PMIC show a thermal signature momentarily, but nothing comes up. We'll just take a look at the rest of the board. And nothing. Let's take a look at the other side of the board. CPU shows a brief heat signature as it tries to power on, but nothing else. Now this IC chip is showing us a heat signature as it tries to boot. Let's check around it and see what's going on. Sometimes if an I2C line has a fault, the board can present similar symptoms as we see here. So I probe all around the EEPROM chip with my multimeter in diode mode, and all the lines read normal. There are no short circuits or any unusual values. At this point, the only option left was to attempt a software update, retaining user data using 3U tools. I clamped the top and bottom boards into my iSocket testing jig, forced DFU mode by connecting a power button flex and probing the volume button FPC with my tweezers, and ran the software update. It crashed at exactly 34%. To rule out problems with the iSocket, I reballed the sandwich board using my Amao stencil. After verifying the solder balls were perfect, I placed the top and bottom boards on a preheater set to 190 degrees Celsius. Once at temperature, I performed the nudge test to ensure the board was floating freely on the molten solder. After cooling and a visual inspection for solder bridges, I ran the update again in 3U tools, and this time it failed at 19%. Okay, so I've reballed the sandwich board on the iPhone 14. We're gonna plug it in and try and update it through 3U tools once again, and let's see if that solves the issue. Because I was thinking maybe in the jig it's not making good connection, and that's why it's not updating, but we'll give that a shot. Since the failure point had shifted, I decided to reball the NAND to rule out cold solder joints underneath it. Because I had reballed the board with low melt solder, I decided to split the sandwich board again before desoldering the NAND. To rule out cold solder joints, I need to pull the NAND and reball it. But this is the most dangerous part of the operation. The NAND is located right next to the PMIC, and the CPU is on the other side of the board, and both of these chips are heavily underfilled from the factory with a hard epoxy resin. To prevent overheating the CPU or the PMIC, heat management is everything. I start by carefully scraping away the black epoxy surrounding the perimeter of the NAND using a custom blade and very low heat. This breaks the physical seal so I can safely lift the chip without lifting up the surrounding components around the NAND. Once the perimeter is clear, I apply precise targeted heat just to the NAND, and the moment the underlying solder melts, I lift the chip away. Now I have to prep the site. I apply flux and use solder braid with my iron to clear away the old factory solder and scrape off the remaining epoxy from the logic board. The goal here is to leave a flat, perfect, pristine array of copper pads. If even a microscopic piece of hardened resin is left behind, the chip will sit unevenly, the pads won't connect, and the repair will fail. I repeat this exact same cleaning process on the bottom of the NAND chip itself. I start by tinning all the pads with low melt solder, and then I clear away all of the remaining underfill. Next, I prep the NAND for reinstallation. I align the chip under my stencil and apply a fresh layer of solder paste. With a quick pass of the hot air, the paste forms into a perfect grid of new shiny solder balls. These new connections are critical. We are replacing the fractured factory solder with a fresh alloy that will restore communication between the storage and the CPU. I carefully align the newly reballed NAND back onto the motherboard, apply heat until the solder flows into place, and I give it a slight nudge to ensure it is seated perfectly. With a fresh connection established, it is time to clamp the boards back into the testing jig and run the update one more time. Let us see if this solves the 19% failure. I flashed it again, and it threw error 2009. To definitively isolate the NAND from a potential CPU issue, I removed the NAND entirely and flashed the board without it. This time, it failed with error 4014. That was the proof I needed. The CPU was fine, and the customer's NAND had failed. Since we have confirmed that the customer NAND had failed, we have no option left but to try and replace the NAND. So I harvested a replacement NAND from a donor iPhone 14. I reballed it and installed it on the customer's board. With the replacement NAND soldered onto the board, it is time to flash the software onto it. Okay, so the phone gets detected in DFU mode. Let us flash it. And because we've changed the NAND, we have to do a full flash. So let's see if that works. The software flash fought me the whole way. It failed in 3U tools. It failed using iTunes Flash within 3U tools. So finally I switched to a completely different laptop using standalone iTunes, and the flash completed successfully. But my challenges weren't over. Right in the middle of the process, the phone's battery died. Fortunately, the device had already completed the iTunes Flash. I connected the phone to a charger while still in the iSocket jig, and it finally powered on fully. Okay, so the battery died on this thing in the middle of the update, which is really annoying. So let's plug it in. We'll see if it completes the software update. That shows. All right, so after the NAND replacement, the device powers on and works. Excellent, indeed. All right, so this is the customer board, and I'll put the customer NAND on our donor. I'm going to try and restore this, and we'll confirm if the NAND has actually failed. All right, so this is our donor phone with the customer's NAND installed. Let us plug it into 3U Tools, and we'll try to restore it. Before final assembly, I wanted absolute closure, so I soldered the customer's dead NAND to my donor motherboard and flashed it, and I got the exact same error 2009. That was the final nail in the coffin. The original NAND was officially dead. Okay, so with the customer NAND on our donor board, it still fails with error 2009. That confirms the NAND had died. Fantastic. I'm going to reball the sandwich board and get it ready. It is time to put the phone back together. I start by soldering the PMIC shield back on. After that, I carefully inspected the reballed sandwich board to ensure all the solder balls are perfectly even. Inspecting a perfect reball is perhaps the most satisfying part of the soldering process. With the reball completed, I popped the board on a preheater, and once the solder was fully liquid, I gently nudged the top board to ensure it was floating on the molten solder. It is so satisfying to watch surface tension pull the top board perfectly into position. Once cooled, I carefully check the sandwich board to make sure none of the solder balls are bridged or disconnected. And it looks perfect. So I move on to the next step. I fully reassembled the phone in its housing, but this phone had one last curveball. During setup, I realized Face ID wasn't working. Because I had previously flashed the phone in the iSocket jig without the Face ID module connected, the logic board wouldn't detect it. To restore function, I had to flash the phone one last time in iTunes with everything plugged in. After that final flash, I had a fully working device. This solar-damaged phone had been fully resurrected. If you have a dead device and need your data recovered, you can mail it to me. I accept B2B and B2C mail-in repairs from all across Canada and the USA. If you want to see how I tracked down a hidden short circuit on a MacBook, click this video right here.